During the period of the two Han dynasties, there was a mysterious prophecy known as the Great Han shall rise high on the road. From the late Western Han to the late Eastern Han, countless people tried to associate themselves with this prophecy in order to gain the legal foundation to replace the Han dynasty. For example, Yuan Shu once believed that the Great Han shall rise high on the road referred to him, but in the end he was utterly ruined because of it. However, in terms of height and influence, the Great Han shall rise high on the road was still inferior to another prophecy, which stated, every 500 years there will be the rise of a true king, and in between there will certainly be a man of great wisdom. This saying originated in the Warring States period put forth by Meng Ke, the great master of Confucianism. Compared with other prophecies of obscure origin, the words of Meng Ke naturally carried far greater weight. The Great Han shall rise high on the road, although important, was ultimately only the fate of a single dynasty, while every 500 years there will be the rise of a true king became the main thread running through history, unbroken and unending. According to the view of Meng Ke, the succession of kingship in the world passed from Yao and Shun to Shang Tang, from Shang Tang to King Wen, and from King Wen to Confucius. But after Confucius, who the next true king would be became hazy and uncertain. Because it was so vague and carried such lofty character, very few dared to risk stepping forth to bear that title. Yet, even though this prophecy was at such a lofty level, by the end of the Han and during the Three Kingdoms, indeed there was one person considered to be the true king of the prophecy. That man was Xun Yu. Xun Yu, courtesy name Wen Ruo, came from a great clan of the Eastern Han in Yingchuan Commandery. Yingchuan had 4 great families, among which the Zhun clan ranked first. The Zun clan of Yingchuan began with the ancestor Xun Shu. In his time, together with Chen Shi, the progenitor of the Chen clan, and Zhong Hao, the progenitor of the Zhong clan, he occupied the foremost position among the noble families of the Eastern Han and was honored as Divine Lord with a reputation and virtue so high that people were astonished. At that time, the refined scholars of the realm all took it as an honor to be taught by Xun Shu. From the direct disciples of Xun Shu, one could see how important his prestige was. Xun Shu had 8 sons, each one renowned, and they were called by the world the 8 Dragons. These 8 sons in turn forged alliances with other great families, creating for the Shun clan of Yingchuan an extremely deep and powerful family foundation. Xun Yu was the grandson of Xun Shu, the son of Xun Yan, and he inherited the talent of his forebears. With extraordinary gifts and a graceful bearing like that of an immortal, the great scholar He Yong, upon meeting the young Xun Yu, was astonished and declared that he was a worthy talent to assist a true king. Therefore, the fame of Xun Yu spread widely from early on. Like many other sons of great families, Xun Yu was first recommended as filial and incorrupt, giving him the qualification to enter officialdom, where he served as magistrate of the capital handicrafts office. But when Dong Zhuo usurped power and brought chaos, Xun Yu did not wish to be used by him and resigned his post to return home. When the lords of Guangdong joined forces to punish Dong Zhuo, the realm was engulfed in flames of war, and heroes from every region stepped onto the historical stage. Xun Yu was no exception. A good minister seeks the time to serve, a worthy minister chooses his lord and goes, so he too needed to find a wise master to assist. The first man who came into Xun Yu's view was Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao came from one of the top great families of the Eastern Han, the Yuan clan of Runan, which had long been famous for producing heroes. When Dong Zhuo threw the court into disorder, Yuan Shao thundered with words like lightning, "All under heaven see the thief rise alone, Dong Gong is public in his villainy," to oppose Dong Zhuo, and then launched the opening of the grand coalition of the Guangdong lords to punish him. It can be said that compared to Cao Cao at that time, whether in family background or actual strength, Yuan Shao stood a grade above. With his noble birth and outstanding manner, Yuan Shao naturally also took favor with Xun Yu. However, In reality, after only brief contact, Xun Yu immediately abandoned Yuanshao and turned to follow Cao Cao. Why Xun Yu left Yuanshao for Cao Cao cannot now be made fully clear, but during that time, two great events occurred. One was the disintegration and collapse of the coalition of lords led by Yuanshao. The other was Yuanshao's plan to enthrone Liu Yu of Yuzhou as emperor. Through these two events, Xun Yu judged the situation and the character of Yuanshao and Cao Cao. Yuanshao indeed once had a glorious moment and nearly ended the chaos to restore the Han, but as his power grew, he became increasingly corrupted, concerned only with his own gain. Such men were already too many in times of turmoil. In contrast, Cao Cao at that time still retained a measure of idealism, and in both matters he held a firm stance with superior insight. In the second year of the Chu-Ping reign of Emperor Xian, 191, Xun Yu was 29 years old when he first met Cao Cao. At that meeting, Cao Cao was extremely excited and praised Xun Yu as being his very own Zhuge Liang, also called Zhang Zifang. As for Xun Yu, his heart surged with emotion. From the very start of his career, Cao Cao, a man radiating the aura of a destined leader, had already gathered a loyal band of clan brothers such as Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yuan, Cao Ren, and Cao Hong, forming a solid military foundation for him. Later, even as generals like Yu Jin or commanding figures from powerful outer clans joined, Cao Cao's camp still maintained the structure where the clan brothers were the central core. This lasted until the reign of Cao Fang, when the faction of Cao Shuang and Shahu Xuan was destroyed by Sima Yi, and only then did this situation come to an end. Yet this system also had its flaws. Talent within a single clan or family was limited, and inevitably there would be breaks in succession. Once such a break occurred, it created a crisis of governance. Even in the early days of Cao Cao's career, this was the case. Among the Chu, Jiahu, and Cao brothers in Yuyang, there were generals who were crippled. Thus, just as Liu Bei had to find Zhuge Liang in order to rise in one leap, so too did Cao Cao need his own Zhuge Liang. Without doubt, that person was Xun Yu. So how important was Xun Yu to Cao Cao? After choosing Cao Cao as his lord, Xun Yu gave his full devotion, sharing both fortune and misfortune. Talents from Yingchuan, such as Xun Yu, Guo Jia, Zong Yao, Chen Kun, Sima Lang, Shu Chu, Tao Ji, Du Shi, Zhao Yan, Yan Xiang, and Wei Kang all entered Cao Cao's service thanks to Xun Yu's recommendations. Xun Yu essentially helped Cao Cao establish a complete civil administration. Those he introduced, though each had different skills and specialties, shared two reliable traits: unity and loyalty. Therefore, Xun Yu's position in Cao Cao's camp was even more crucial than Zhuge Liang's was to Liu Bei. In reality, he was Cao Cao's true partner. Behind him stood a large force of powerful aristocratic families with shared positions and demands, and Xun Yu himself represented the strength of those families. He remained firmly in Cao Cao's rear base, rarely leading troops in person. This steadfastness allowed Cao Cao to wage campaigns on all sides without fear of instability at home. In the first year of Jingping, when Cao Cao's father passed through Shu province, he was murdered by Zhang Kai, a subordinate of Tao Qian, the governor of Shu province. Cao Cao was overcome with grief and personally led troops to attack Shu province. But before the front lines had any result, chaos erupted in his rear base at Yan province. His most trusted longtime friend Zhang Miao, along with his confidant strategist Chen Gong, conspired with the warlord Liu Bei and raised a rebellion. At that time, Cao Cao's main forces were away, leaving too few troops to defend Yan province. In an instant, most of the cities in Yan province wavered and surrendered. It seemed Cao Cao would fall into a desperate situation with nowhere left to stand. Xun Yu stepped forward, turning the crisis around. Together with General Xiahou Dun, he executed several dozen leaders of the would-be rebels overnight, temporarily stabilizing the situation. Not long after, Guo Gong, the inspector of Yu province, led his army to confront Xun Yu. At that time, there were rampant rumors that Guogong was secretly colluding with Liu Bei and harbored sinister intentions. Everyone was terrified, yet only Xun Yu remained calm. Guogong invited Xun Yu to meet him. Xun Yu resolved to go alone. Shah Hudan anxiously tried to stop him, but Xun Yu showed no fear. After meeting Guogong, he spoke and laughed at ease. Seeing Xun Yu's confident demeanor, Guogong dared not act rashly and promptly withdrew his army. Through his composure, Xun Yu saved Cao Cao's base from complete collapse, creating the conditions for Cao Cao to return, expel Liu Bei, and suppress the rebellion. Although Xun Yu was 7 years younger than Cao Cao, Cao Cao treated him as a mentor and respected him deeply. Under Cao Cao's command, strategists were as numerous as raindrops, full of intellect and eloquence, and the relationships between lord and advisors were harmonious. Yet no matter how resourceful other strategists were, they only carried out orders. Xun Yu was different. In front of him, Cao Cao was humble, like a student seeking instruction. Even when often campaigning in the field, Cao Cao sought Xun Yu's counsel on every major matter of state. In the first year of Jianan, Emperor Xian returned from Chang'an to Luoyang. The question of whether to welcome the Son of Heaven sparked debate in Cao Cao's army. Most opposed it, arguing that Shu province was not yet pacified and that the emperor was surrounded by warlords such as Han Xian, Yang Feng, and Zhang Yang. Any attempt to reach for the emperor might provoke turmoil. Xun Yu, however, firmly stood on the side of righteousness. From the perspective of grand principle and virtue, he urged Cao Cao to welcome the emperor. In the end, Cao Cao accepted Xun Yu's proposal, bringing the emperor under his control. From that point, he gained the strategic advantage of holding the Son of Heaven to command the lords, laying the foundation for a series of victories to come. In the Battle of Guan Yu, when Cao Cao confronted the powerful opponent Yuan Shao, he nearly failed to hold out many times and wrote letters to Xun Yu to express his distress. Xun Yu then used the example of the Chuhan struggle at the end of the Qin dynasty, analyzing the strategic situation of both sides, and asserted that Yuan Shao would certainly be defeated. He firmly urged Cao Cao to endure, while also ensuring a secure rear and an immense supply line. In the end, Cao Cao indeed defeated Yuan Shao, taking the most solid step on the road to unifying the north. Yet the situation of wise ruler and loyal ministers, supported by virtuous talents, ultimately underwent great change. What transformations actually occurred? In truth, the noble clans represented by Xun Yu were loyal not necessarily to the concrete Han dynasty itself, but rather to the concept, the abstract idea of the Han. In other words, what they were devoted to. The Han dynasty lasted more than 400 years. Its peaceful order could be broken and then repaired, peace could be shattered and then restored. The downfall of every long-lasting dynasty meant the collapse of certain corresponding rules. But on the foundation of old rules, to establish a new and stable order was even harder than founding a new dynasty itself. Some sought shortcuts to re-establish a royal house, while others chose to uphold the old dynasty and create a new order within it. Xun Yu belonged to the latter group, and so did Cao Cao. Therefore, when Yuan Shao sought to enthrone a new emperor, Xun Yu decisively withdrew. For Cao Cao, who opposed Yuan Shao's grand ambition of replacing the Han, this naturally created a deep resonance. Yet later, the two men grew apart in their thinking. Cao Cao was characterized by brilliance and decisiveness, with extraordinary executive ability, extremely pragmatic, and daring to break established rules, something difficult for heirs of great aristocratic families. Because of this, Xun Yu and others were willing to devote themselves wholeheartedly to assist Cao Cao in becoming a hero and pacifying the troubled times. But as Cao Cao's power gradually expanded, enemies were successively eliminated, and the balance of power between the Han court already reduced to a mere symbol, and Cao Cao's faction completely reversed. The idealism within Cao Cao slowly withered, and the hero ultimately became a cruel dragon. Cao Cao once said, "If the world had no me, How many would call themselves heroes? How many would proclaim themselves kings? This was indeed true. Yet at the same time, Cao Cao gradually departed from his original intention and later never again thought of helping the Han restore its prestige and order. In fact, this is a problem any great meritorious minister would inevitably face. As a subject, after rendering vast achievements that shook heaven and earth, could one retreat back into the role of a humble servant, restraining oneself carefully? This was hardly something ordinary men could achieve. Across thousands of years, only a few rare figures such as Yi Yin, Zhou Gong, Guo Jia, Zheng Guofan, and the like managed it. Even Huo Guang could hardly escape a regrettable end. Cao Cao had such an opportunity, but in the end he did not choose it. Though Cao Cao once hesitated, once said, "If the mandate of heaven rests upon me, then I shall be Zhou Wenwang," his stance still clearly inclined toward founding a new dynasty. This left Xun Yu deeply disappointed. Cao Cao's enterprise was built with Xun Yu's aid. No one understood better than Xun Yu that Cao Cao's brilliant success depended entirely upon his personal talent, not upon any system more advanced than that of the Han. While Cao Cao lived, this was not a problem, but after his death, could his successors be as outstanding as he? What if the situation slipped out of control? Xun Yu had worked diligently and cautiously for half a lifetime. His hope was not to add merely 10 or 20 years to the dynasty, only for the realm to plunge once more into great chaos. What he truly longed for was lasting peace and order. But such an aim inevitably harmed the interests of others, including Cao Cao himself. Conflict between the two sides became unavoidable. The result was foreseeable. In the 17th year of Jianan, Xun Yu died. The records say, "He died in melancholy," a phrase often used as a veiled way of saying one perished due to discord with one's lord. The year after Xun Yu's death, Cao Cao became Duke of Wei. In the 21st year of Jianan, Cao Cao advanced to King of Wei. In the 25th year of Jianan, Cao Cao died, and Cao Pi replaced the Han, ending the Han dynasty and beginning the era of Great Wei. Throughout Cao Cao's life, nearly all his major decisions bore the imprint of Xun Yu. Cao Cao once said, "When the realm was secured, the merit belonged to you." And Xun Yu, who had never won victories on the battlefield, truly deserved that praise. Cao Cao repeatedly submitted memorials to the emperor asking for rewards for Xun Yu, but Xun Yu refused each time. Cao Cao again and again wrote letters to persuade him, even planning to recommend him for the position of one of the three dukes. But Xun Yu consistently declined, so Cao Cao finally ceased to press him. Most precious of all, Xun Yu was not only a man of exceptional strategy with towering achievements for which he accepted no reward, but also a man of integrity and purity, lofty as plum blossoms beneath the snow. When reviving the Han had become a slogan laden with hidden meaning, when benevolence and morality had turned into ornate yet hollow displays, when people's faith rested only upon power and intrigue, Xun Yu still walked amidst the blood and bones, maneuvering between schemes and killings, taking as his duty the service of the Han dynasty. Every scheme and plan he devised was never aimed at destruction, but always stood upon the position of the Han dynasty and the common people, taking benevolence and righteousness as the foremost principle, arranging chaotic disorder into clear order. Like a lamp in the deep night, he forever illuminated the place of justice and brightness. In the Eastern Jin period, Yuan Hong of the Ming clan once summarized in his praise of the famous ministers of the three kingdoms, "To hear his name is like embracing unique wisdom," and yet he carried a heart devoted to the past. The people all sighed with admiration, his talents no less than the descendants of Wei Wu, truly worthy as the foremost minister. When Xun Yu passed away, Liu Bei also advanced north from Chengdu to meet Liu Jiang. If Liu Bei's entry into Shu was a bold military gamble, then Liu Jiang's decision to invite Liu Bei, a man famed for heroic prowess, into his own splendid city was also a daring move. Although the remonstrations of his subordinates were not enough to shake his decision, they still caused him to harbor some suspicion and unease. This time, when he received Liu Bei, outwardly it was a welcome and grand hospitality, but at the same time he brought more than 30,000 troops, even more than Liu Bei's forces. On the surface it was harmony, but behind it lay a display of military power, as if secretly saying to Liu Bei, "Zhuande, it is true you excel at fighting, but I am no less. I invited you only to assist me. You must not play the trick of seizing host's place as guest. This time it is I, Liu Jiang, who will speak with authority." How could an old hand like Liu Bei not clearly understand Liu Jiang's thoughts? The meeting at Fu County on this occasion was conducted in an outwardly calm atmosphere, but beneath the surface, waves of tension surged. Liu Jiang invited Liu Bei into Shu for three purposes. The first was to deal with Zhang Lu in Hanzong, the second was afterward to block Cao Cao, the third was to suppress stubborn subordinates such as Pang Xi. Here, however, lay a crucial issue to be discussed first, that if Liu Bei truly defeated Zhang Lu, what then would be done? The land of Hanzhong, once seized, would it ultimately belong to Liu Jiang or to Liu Bei? Although the specific content of the negotiations at Fu County was not recorded in detail, from the fact that after the meeting Liu Jiang presented a memorial to the court recommending Liu Bei as acting Grand Commandant and Colonel of the Guards, while Liu Bei recommended Liu Zhang as Grand General who guards the West and Governor of Yi Province, together performing a scene of formal humility in yielding office, one can see that their talks were relatively pleasant. From this one may infer that Liu Jiang likely agreed to let Liu Bei govern Hanzhong in his stead after defeating Zhang Lu. After all, since Liu Bei had endured the hardships of coming, he could not be expected to shed blood in vain merely for Liu Zhang. As for Liu Zhang, he also wished to imitate the model of his father Liu Yan, to have a man skilled in battle, such as Liu Bei, defend the northern gate on his behalf. This was precisely the greatest card Liu Jiang thought he could play to persuade Liu Bei to enter Shu, but unfortunately, this was only his own thinking. This time Liu Bei entered Shu, his purpose was not merely to take Hanzong, for even if Hanzong were taken, it was isolated in the north, thousands of li away from his base in Jingzhou, and facing Cao Cao's fierce assaults, it could not be held. This Liu Jiang perhaps could not understand, but Liu Bei, who had campaigned for many years and fought countless times with Cao Cao, could never be so muddle-headed. Moreover, if Liu Bei's sole intention had been to help Liu Zhang strike Zhang Lu, then Sun Quan would not have sent Liu Dai with 2,000 troops to serve under Liu Bei's command. A shrewd opportunist like Sun Quan would only invest if there were greater returns, and that greater return was the whole of Yi Province. This was also Liu Bei's true objective. Naturally, as a seasoned statesman, Liu Bei surely administered a bewitching draft to Liu Zhang. In their meeting, he deliberately disguised himself as a politician concerned only with petty gains. Hearing Liu Zhang agree to cede Hanzong, Liu Bei feigned delight, leaping for joy. Liu Zhang, seeing this, felt complacent, thinking his strategy had succeeded. But that was only the first step in Liu Bei's game. Before entering Shu, Liu Bei had already conferred carefully with Fa Zheng, deciding that once inside Shu, all logistics would be handed over to Liu Zhang, while he himself would only fight the battles. Liu Bei's army numbered 10,000, which was no small force. Even merely stationed without fighting, each month consumed enormous financial resources. Once war broke out, each month Yi Province would need to mobilize at least 50,000 people to transport provisions to the front lines, consuming half the resources of the entire province for Liu Bei's service. Over time, the people of Yi Province would be dragged into the whirlpool of large-scale war, a price Liu Zhang was unwilling to pay. For that reason, Liu Zhang invited Liu Bei into Shu. Outwardly, he loudly proclaimed that he wished Liu Bei to discipline Zhang Lu, who was unruly. But in truth, he had no intention of having Liu Bei truly march against Zhang Lu. His original plan was simply to use Liu Bei to hold off Zhang Lu externally while suppressing Pang Xi internally. In this way, he could save manpower and avoid spending much grain. Liu Bei traveled from Jing province over 10,000 li, virtually cut off from his rear support, entering a strange land to face unfamiliar foes. His logistics were forced to rely entirely upon Liu Zhang. Thus, Liu Zhang could use supplies to control Liu Bei, binding him at the front, while at once coping with Zhang Lu and Pang Xi and also restraining Liu Bei from growing stronger. In the long run, this would throw the political and military situation of Yi province into entanglement, ensuring the peace and safety of Bashu. This was Liu Zhang's true calculation and the most important reason why he ignored his subordinates' objections and resolutely invited Liu Bei into Shu. You all must not be ignorant and clamor foolishly, ruining my fine plan. Indeed, Liu Zhang acted this way. He readily granted Liu Bei 200,000 hu of grain and nothing more. At first glance, 200,000 hu of grain seemed much, but for Liu Bei's 10,000 troops it was like a drop in the ocean. Merely mustering his forces in Jing province and leading them into Shu had already cost 2 months. Thus, the supplies Liu Zhang provided were only enough for the opening expense of the campaign, with nothing thereafter. When Liu Bei stationed his army at Jiameng Pass on the front lines, his soldiers were compelled to forage locally to barely maintain minimal defense. Such logistics were insufficient. To avoid arousing Liu Bei's dissatisfaction and rebellion, Liu Zhang even placed the Baishui troops, who were also stationed at the front, under Liu Bei's command. Outwardly, this reinforced Liu Bei against Zhang Lu, but in reality, it was deliberately arranged as a force at his side to monitor him. Logistics and surveillance, Liu Zhang applied both at once. After arranging matters to his satisfaction, he returned at ease to Chengdu. At this time, Liu Bei realized that ravens are black everywhere, and he began to look down on this kinsman. In truth, even during the initial meeting in Yi province, the strategist Pang Tong had already discerned that Liu Zhang's mind was not simple, advising Liu Bei to take advantage of the banquet to kill Liu Zhang and then directly seize Yi province. Liu Bei had not failed to consider Pang Tong's advice, but compared with Pang Tong, he thought more carefully. Since ancient times, he who wins the hearts of the people wins the realm. Indeed, he could have ended matters with one stroke by decapitating Liu Zhang. Yet, he had only just arrived in this land, and his reputation in Yi province was naturally not established. If he were to kill Liu Zhang outright, it would be rash, unrighteous, and unbenevolent. This would provoke fierce resistance from the soldiers and people of Yi province, throwing the whole province into turmoil and unrest, unfavorable for future governance. Therefore, Liu Bei chose to remain still and watch for change, awaiting the best time to act. Since Liu Bei's army lacked adequate logistics, it could not undertake the expedition against Zhang Lu in Hanzhong. Yet he did not remain idle. At Jiameng Pass, he sought in many ways to show virtue and win people's hearts, laying the foundation early for later plans. Some accused Liu Bei before Liu Zhang, but Liu Zhang ignored them, even feeling self-satisfied. To Liu Zhang, this situation was exactly what he desired. As long as Zhang Lu did not attack and Liu Bei stayed in his place, then his own seat as Lord of Yi province would remain secure. But Liu Zhang's comfortable days did not last long. In the 10th month of the 17th year of Jianan, Liu Bei suddenly sent word to Liu Zhang that he wished to return home. At that time, Cao Cao had pacified Guanzhong and was elated. Remembering the humiliation he had suffered at Red Cliffs, he could not swallow it, and so he once again mustered his great army to march south against Sun Quan, seeking to regain his honor. Sun Quan could not resist Cao Cao alone, and turned to Liu Bei for aid. Meanwhile, Liu Bei's base at Jing province was harassed by Cao's forces. Having been at Jiameng Pass for nearly a year, Liu Bei seized this opportunity. Under the pretext of wanting to go home, he sought to test Liu Zhang's response. Liu Bei told Liu Zhang that he had been at the front so long without Zhang Lu troubling them, proving Zhang Lu was no real threat. Now that the south was in peril, he hoped his kinsman would let him return for a time. If more troops, money, and provisions could be provided, it would be even better. Liu Zhang, displeased that Liu Bei was abandoning matters midway, was further angered when Liu Bei asked so boldly. He replied, "Brother, my household is not abundant. I can only satisfy half your request. Go quickly, then return soon." That answer was exactly what Liu Bei wanted. He immediately feigned anger. "For a year I have accomplished nothing, only guarding your gates. Though I have no merit, I have borne hardship. Yet you give me no reward, and now, when I face troubles at home, you still refuse to help. What kind of propriety is this? What kind of kin are you?" Then, before his assembled subordinates, he openly scolded Liu Zhang as dark-hearted. In truth, Liu Bei wished to return to Jing province and needed a pretext to strike at Yi province. By doing this, he achieved two aims. First, to create public justification for raising troops. Second, to rally his officers and soldiers to unity. "Everyone see, it is not I, Liu Bei, who is unrighteous, but Liu Zhang who is unbenevolent. I must claim justice." At that very moment, an unexpected event occurred, causing the conflict between Liu Bei and Liu Zhang to erupt completely. It turned out that Zhang Song, who was secretly assisting Liu Bei while at Liu Zhang's side, heard news that Liu Bei intended to return home and believed he truly meant to leave. If so, then all the efforts of Zhang Song and Fa Zeng would be wasted. In haste, he wrote a letter urging Liu Bei to stay, but his brother Zhang Su denounced him. Liu Zhang was alarmed, immediately executed Zhang Song, and ordered the generals guarding the passes to cut off all contact with Liu Bei. Liu Zhang roared, "So Liu Xuande, you dare to smile outwardly while hiding a knife in your belly. For a long time you have plotted to seize my Yi province." At the front lines at Jiaming Pass, Liu Bei had to cross all of Liu Zhang's territory in order to return home. At every pass or river, he required the cooperation of Liu Zhang's generals. Once Liu Zhang gave the order, Liu Bei's road back home was completely blocked. With matters at this point, Liu Bei no longer concealed his intentions and formally raised his army against Liu Zhang. Both Liu Bei and Liu Zhang, kinsmen of the Han imperial clan, ultimately turned into enemies because of self-interest. Yi province was vast, and Liu Bei could not conquer it all. Thus, the urgent task was to capture Cheng Yu. To capture the bandit, one must first seize the king by taking Chengdu and capturing Liu Zhang alive. The other territories would fall in turn, and the whole of Yi province would belong to Liu Bei. However, from Jiaming Pass, where Liu Bei was stationed, to Chengdu, where Liu Zhang resided, there was still more than 1,000 li. Along the way, the terrain was mountainous and perilous, with many fortified passes, making the march extremely arduous. To conquer Yi province in one campaign still required careful deliberation. The strategist Pang Tong had long devised countermeasures for attacking Liu Zhang, and he presented Liu Bei with three plans: superior, middle, and inferior. The superior plan was to select elite troops, march swiftly day and night, and launch a direct assault on Chengdu, settling all of Yi province in a single stroke. The middle plan was to kill Liu Zhang, while also placing under surveillance the generals of the Whitewater Army under his command such as Yang Huai and Gao Pei, then steadily advanced toward Chengdu from the south. The inferior plan was to take winding side roads, disregarding the exhaustion of soldiers, first returning to Jing province and then gradually infiltrating until all of Yi province was absorbed. Each of the three plans had its strengths and weaknesses, but none could be said to be wholly superior or inferior. So, Liu Bei, who had long set his sights on Yi province, would ultimately choose which course, and Liu Zhang, determined to preserve his foundation, how would he respond? In the eyes of conspiracy theorists, Guo Jia was the great figure pulling strings behind the scenes, plotting the death of Sun Ci. Some even claim that later details were fabrications of later generations. The saying, "Guo Jia is no less than the Wolong, only it was a pity he did not live in the right time," spread widely. So in the end, what sort of man was Guo Jia in history? What role did he play in Cao Cao's quest for supremacy? Although in the records of the Three Kingdoms by Chen Shou, within the Wei Shu biography of Guo Jia, the evaluation of him was extremely high, the account was somewhat brief. To understand more fully the extraordinary renown of Guo Jia in the Wei Jin era, one must rely on the annotations of Pei Songzhi of the southern dynasties. One of Guo Jia's most devoted admirers was Fu Xuan, who in his work Fu Zi elevated his idol from a standard strategist in the records of the Three Kingdoms into a flawless genius, combining the heroic aura of a gallant wanderer with the temperament of a refined scholar who cultivated wide friendships. Because of the passage of time, Fu Zi by Fu Xuan, which was originally divided into 3 books, inner, outer, and middle, consisting of several 100,000 characters, has long been lost. Today, only some quoted passages and basic poems remain. Thus, we cannot know the complete original text of the many sections that Pei Songzhi cited extensively in his annotation. But by carefully comparing the content between the records of the Three Kingdoms, biography of Guo Jia and Fu Zi regarding Guo Jia's life, we can still see clearly that Fu Xuan added many details lacking in the records. For instance, the Wei Shu in the records of the Three Kingdoms only briefly recorded. Guo Jia, styled Fen Xiao, was a native of Yangjai in Yingchuan. Yet Fu Xuan added, his family was noble and his friends were all outstanding men. At the end of the Han, when the realm fell into turmoil, he still remained calm as usual, concealed his name while making broad associations, refusing to consort with the vulgar. For this reason, many sought eagerly to form ties with him. On the surface, this passage poses no problem, but upon reflection, doubts arise. For Fu Xuan was born in the 19th year of Jianan, by which time Guo Jia had long since died. So from where did Fu Xuan obtain accounts that Guo Jia had long foreseen the chaos of the realm and then concealed his name to befriend heroes? To resolve this puzzle, one must begin from Guo Jia's early life experiences. Guo Jia was born in the 3rd year of Jianing, when Emperor Lu Hong of Han had just ascended the throne. At that time, the central government of Eastern Han was rife with factional struggles, while the provinces were engulfed in ceaseless warfare. 2 years before Guo Jia's birth, the eunuch faction led by Wang Fu launched a coup, striking down General-in-Chief Du Wu, who had been notorious for his arrogance. Afterward, the eunuchs suppressed public opinion, even accusing many scholars of treason, sentencing them to death or exile, which resulted in the second disaster of partisan prohibitions. Guo Jia was from Yingchuan, which was close to Luoyang, so this place became a crucial area ravaged by the disaster of the partisan prohibitions. Among the renowned clans of the time, the 8 dragons of the Sun family were well known, such as Xun Yu, who was killed, and Sun Yun, the Grand Administrator of Guangling, who was imprisoned. In the 5th year of Jianping, when Guo Jia was only 6 years old, Cao Luan, the Grand Administrator of Yongchang, and Meng Yuan, the Master of the Secretariat, were accused of being partisans for petitioning to lift restrictions on scholars. The eunuch faction then launched a frenzied suppression, not only executing Cao Luan, but also compelling Emperor Ling of Han to issue an edict that anyone connected to the partisans, whether disciples, fathers and sons, or brothers, would all be dismissed from office and permanently prohibited, implicating 5 whole clans. Under such circumstances, the scholar clans of Yingchuan had virtually no path to rise. By the 1st year of Zhongping, in the 2nd month, the Yellow Turban Uprising erupted. Followers of the Way of Great Peace in Yingchuan, under the instigation of leaders such as Bo Kai, raised the banner of revolt and at one point besieged the commandant of Zhu Commandery at Changshe. Fortunately, the left Central Army General Huang Fu Song and Colonel Cao Cao led troops to the rescue, using fire attacks to break the siege of Changsha. The Yellow Turban forces suffered heavy losses and retreated into Guo Jia's hometown Yangjai County. Although during the pursuit by Huang Fu Song and others the Yellow Turbans disintegrated and did not inflict major losses on Yangjai, the 4-year-old Guo Jia had heard, and even witnessed with his own eyes, the scenes of bloody massacres. He could hardly avoid developing a premonition that the realm was destined for great chaos. Perhaps it was also at that time that Guo Jia began to take note of the colonel personally charging into battle Cao Cao and formed the thought of befriending a hero. At the same time, in order to unite powerful local forces and suppress the Yellow Turban Uprising, the Eastern Han court, in the first year of Zhongping, the court abolished the prohibition against partisans, and from then on the scholars of Yingchuan immediately began to display their talents in politics. Among the outstanding descendants of the Sun clan, there were Sun Shang, the son of Xun Yu, and Xun Yu, the grandson of Sun Yun, both of whom were born in the 6th year of Zhongping. Among them, Xun Yu took as wife Tang Heng, the niece of the eunuch Zhang clan, and was appointed magistrate of the capital handicrafts office, a post in charge of managing the emperor's documents. Xun Yu, meanwhile, was recruited by General-in-Chief He Jin and appointed Gentleman of the Yellow Gate. At this same time, Guo Jia, at 19 years of age, reached the wheat crown, according to the saying of Fu Xuan. With aspirations and ambitions for the future, Guo Jia left his hometown and traveled to Luoyang and other places to befriend the talented. Though Fu Xuan did not specify whom Guo Jia met from the development of his later career, it can be seen that this journey of fellowship at least left a deep impression upon Xun Yu, who later recommended Guo Jia to Cao Cao. So, what change would the appearance of Guo Jia bring to Cao Cao? Just as Guo Jia was traveling in Luoyang, General-in-Chief He Jin, as an imperial relative, broke out into fierce conflict with the eunuch faction led by the Zhang clan. In the end, both sides suffered heavy losses, concluding in mutual destruction. At that moment, Dong Zhuo brought his troops from the frontier into Luoyang, and the contradictions between local warlord forces and the Luoyang aristocracy became all-encompassing, leading to the full-scale civil war of the Eastern Han. Amidst the chaos of war, Guo Jia for a time relied upon Yuan Shao, the leader of the Guangdong coalition against Dong Zhuo. Unfortunately, Yuan Shao, though a 4th generation and 3 excellencies, lacked the discernment to recognize Guo Jia's talent. Not until the first year of Jianan did Guo Jia, thanks to the recommendation of Xun Yu, enter the military camp of Cao Cao. It should be noted that in that very year, Cao Cao had just defeated the remnant Yellow Turban forces and officially taken Yingchuan under his control. Thus, Guo Jia may not have gone directly from Ji province to Cao Cao, but perhaps, after leaving Yuan Shao for some time, returned to Yingchuan before being taken into Cao Cao's service. At that time, Cao Cao had just lost his deeply valued strategist Xun Yu, and therefore personally wrote to Xun Yu, expressing his yearning for the wise. "Since Xun Yu, I have no one to discuss matters with. My heart feels torn apart. Who can replace him?" Therefore, when Guo Jia arrived, he soon became Cao Cao's trusted confidant. Guo Jia did not disappoint, quickly putting forth his famous theory of 10 victories and 10 defeats. According to Fu Xuan's account, immediately upon entering Cao Cao's service, Guo Jia analyzed for him the comprehensive superiority over Yuan Shao in 10 aspects, from morality, institutions, strategy, personnel, civil administration, military achievements, and more. Naturally, to disparage a former leader and praise a new one after changing allegiances was common in officialdom. But examined closely, Guo Jia's analysis had another meaning. After all, Yuan Shao, a hegemon who dominated all of Hebei, could not truly have been as inept as Guo Jia described. Moreover, according to the chronology provided by Fu Xuan, Guo Jia gave his 10 victories, 10 defeats in the 2nd year of Jianan, when Cao Cao had just been defeated at Wancheng, while Yuan Shao was still serving as general-in-chief, holding the succession of supervisory authority and controlling 4 prosperous provinces. In that context, Cao Cao not only lacked the strength to oppose Yuan Shao, but even dared not yet openly break with him. Thus, Guo Jia's lofty argument of 10 victories and 10 defeats was most likely only meant to encourage and reassure Cao Cao after his defeat at Wancheng, preventing him from falling into despair and becoming completely dependent on Yuan Shao. Interestingly, according to Fu Xuan, after hearing Guo Jia's words, Cao Cao could not help but blush, then smiled with emotion and said, "With such words you have spoken, what virtue do I possess to deserve them?" When compared with Guo Jia's 10 victories and 10 defeats recorded by Fu Xuan in the Wei records within the records of the Three Kingdoms at the same time, Xun Yu instead analyzed for Cao Cao the situation of 4 victories and 4 defeats, in contrast with Yuan Shao. Xun Yu emphasized that Cao Cao's greatest political advantage lay in his control of Emperor Xian. As long as this card was skillfully played, Yuan Shao would not dare to act rashly. The saying went, "Whenever one raises troops under the name of the Son of Heaven, who dares not follow, what use is Yuan Shao's power then?" As for Xun Yu's 4 victories and 4 defeats, and Guo Jia's 10 victories and 10 defeats, which is true or false, whether one plagiarized the other, has long been a matter of debate among historians and enthusiasts of the Three Kingdoms. But if we consider it from another angle, the truth may be this. Xun Yu originally analyzed the 4 victories and 4 defeats for Cao Cao, while Guo Jia found this wordplay amusing and deliberately embellished and inflated it into a version of 10 victories and 10 defeats for entertainment. In the end, this allowed Cao Cao, after his defeat at Wancheng and being pressed by Yuan Shao, to find some joy amid humiliation. After accepting the proposals of Xun Yu and Guo Jia regarding simultaneously campaigning east against Liu Bei, adopting the strategy of deciding victory or defeat with the sword, Cao Cao once again marched to Su province. He besieged Liu Bei at Xiapi, but fearing reinforcements might arrive from Zhangyang, Liu Bei's ally, Cao Cao at one point considered retreating. At this crucial moment, both Xun Yu and Guo Jia offered firm remonstrance, finally convincing Cao Cao to commit fully to battle. Perhaps to highlight Guo Jia's role, Fu Xuan's record made no mention of Xun Yu, but the Wei records in the records of the Three Kingdoms did record it clearly. Xun Yu and Guo Jia both stated that Liu Bei was valiant but without strategy, and after 3 defeats in battle his morale had greatly diminished. Armies rely on their commander, and when the commander is weakened, the troops inevitably lose spirit. If advisors had once urged attack but now hesitated without decision, then striking could not bring success. Compared with Guo Jia's later comment in the Fuzi Zhuan, stressing that although Liu Bei had fought for 7 years without a loss, once he fell into misfortune, he lost his life. This showed he had never had lasting strategy. Now, unable to win, his spirit was broken, his advantage gone, with no support inside or outside. Clearly, his strength was no longer as before, and his failure was inevitable. Judging by Guo Jia's words, this was a more comprehensive and convincing analysis. After Liu Bei was executed, Cao Cao brought Liu Bei with him back to Xuchang and sought to bind him as a subordinate. But regarding the question of whether Cao Cao should accept Liu Bei, Guo Jia's attitude appears in clear contradiction among different historical sources. What was Guo Jia's true view about Cao Cao's recruitment of Liu Bei? In fact, in the records of the Three Kingdoms, Wei records, there is no mention of Guo Jia expressing any specific opinion on this matter. Yet, in the Wei records compiled by Wang Shen and the Fuzi Zhuan of Fu Xuan, there appear 2 passages attributed to Guo Jia, though with opposite views. Both sound reasonable, but coming from the same person, they are contradictory. In Wang Shen's Wei records, it is written that when Cao Cao prepared to petition the court to appoint Liu Bei as governor of Yu province, someone reminded him that Liu Bei was an ambitious hero. If not eliminated early, he would surely become a future threat. Cao Cao then asked Guo Jia's opinion. Guo Jia replied that the Lord had raised troops to eliminate tyranny for the people, and thus must cherish the worthy and employ the talented. Now Liu Bei had the reputation of a hero, and in his distress had come to them. If, out of fear, he were to be harmed, it would be infamous as killing the worthy. In this way, the hearts of the people across the realm would abandon them. Who then would share in establishing the empire? To destroy a small threat while harming great righteousness could not be considered. These words emphasize the principle of burying gold to purchase bones, to gain the loyalty of all under heaven. But in the Fuzijuan, the account changes into Guo Jia himself, warning Cao Cao that Liu Bei had great intelligence and skill in winning people's loyalty, and that Zhang Fei and Guan Yu were each enemies of 10,000 men. If granted office, in the end they would not remain under anyone's authority. His schemes could not yet be fully discerned. These words stress that Liu Bei was no ordinary figure. On the contrary, because Cao Cao wished to recruit and honor the worthy, to leave behind a reputation for trust and righteousness, he ultimately ignored Guo Jia's advice to eliminate Liu Bei early. If this contradiction were merely a matter of different authors interpreting a single historical event in different ways, it would be easier to explain. But Fu Xuan had once participated in the compilation of the Wei Shu, later wrote the Fuzijuan, and even showed it to Wang Shen for comment. The two men, sharing the same ideals and being friends, surely must have discussed many historical issues. Why then did they present judgments completely opposed to each other? If we exclude the possibility that Guo Jia himself was truly inconsistent, the explanation may lie in Fu Xuan having been influenced by the words of his father, Fu Kan. Fu Kan once said that Liu Bei was tolerant and magnanimous, able to inspire men to devote themselves with utmost loyalty. Zhuge Liang possessed intelligence of infinite transformation, upright yet full of strategy. Zhang Fei and Guan Yu, brave and useful, were each a match for 10,000 men. If these three commanded together, few under heaven could compare. These words are almost identical to the assessment of Guo Jia found in the Fuzijuan. From the perspective of later history, Cao Cao's decision to keep Liu Bei and Xu Du indeed did not achieve the effect of gaining the realm's submission. In Fu Xuan's eyes, preventing Cao Cao from releasing the tiger back to the mountain was the soundest strategy Guo Jia should have recommended at that time. Guo Jia's prediction of Sun Ce's early death is another example often praised by later generations. At that time, Sun Ce had roamed 1,000 li, seized Jiangdong, and upon hearing that Cao Cao and Yuan Shao were locked in struggle at Guandu, conceived the idea of attacking Xu Chang. The Cao faction was deeply worried. But Guo Jia reassured everyone, saying Sun Ce, though brave, though he associated with heroes and won the people's hearts, was of a violent and rash temperament, with no one to equal him. Even if he commanded 100,000 troops, he was like a lonely man in the wilderness and would certainly die at the hands of a petty villain. Indeed, Sun Ce later died at the hands of the retainer of Xu Gong. What is interesting is that Fu Xuan seemed to have added nothing beyond what was already recorded in the records of the three kingdoms, Wei Shu. Or perhaps Fu Xuan's opinion was not given much weight by Pei Songzhi, who was himself from Jiangnan. For in this case, Pei Songzhi unusually commented directly, saying that Guo Jia's prediction that Sun Ce would die at the hands of a petty man was indeed keen-eyed. But he also emphasized that it was merely a coincidental outcome and should not be excessively revered. After the Battle of Guandu, Guo Jia entered the glorious period of his life. He first accurately analyzed the conflict between Yuan Tan and Yuan Shang, advising Cao Cao to postpone his campaign against Hebei until the Yuan brothers turned on each other. Then he firmly urged Cao Cao to press the advantage, to pursue and campaign far against the Wuhuan, adopting the strategy of abandoning heavy armies, striking by surprise, and exiting the passes at Lulong. Cao Cao defeated the Wuhuan, catching them completely unprepared, but Fu Xuan stressed that even this was not enough. He further highlighted that Cao Cao's ability to recruit and befriend renowned gentlemen was also due to Guo Jia's counsel. It can be seen that Guo Jia's presence for Cao Cao's group was nothing less than an immense treasure. What then was Guo Jia's final fate? In the autumn of the 12th year of Jianan, Guo Jia, whose body was weak and often ill, died of sickness while pursuing Yuan Shang. He was only 38 years old. Cao Cao grieved greatly over this, submitting a memorial to the court to request that a noble title be granted to him. On this point, both the records of the three kingdoms, Wei Shu and Wang Shen's Wei Shu, record the event, though with different wording. In the records of the three kingdoms it is written, "Without grand declarations, in facing the enemy he adapted, his plans undecided yet completed wisdom, in pacifying the realm, his strategies were supreme." Wang Shen's version states, "Without lofty declarations, his words were incisive, his handling was balanced, in every action not a single plan failed." Both were fine praises, yet Wang Shen's account aligned more closely with the political circumstances of that time, for although Cao Cao had defeated Yuan Shao, he could not yet claim that the realm was pacified. In terms of ability, Guo Jia was not entirely irreplaceable for Cao Cao, for after Guo Jia's death, Cao Cao successively appointed Dong Zhao, Zhao Ye, and others to serve as military advisor and libationer, which made this clear. Yet what truly left Cao Cao regretful was Guo Jia's attitude, for from the start he had regarded Cao Cao as the inevitable leader who would replace the Han. When Cao Cao captured Nanpi and slew Yuan Tan, he began to encourage the soldiers to shout 10,000 years while on horseback. This revealed a clear change in how Cao Cao was defining himself within the harsh political environment. When Cao Cao later spoke again of Guo Jia, it was after the disastrous defeat at Red Cliffs. At that time, some within the group openly cast blame, even saying, "If Guo Fengxiao were still alive, he would not have let our Lord fall to this point." Afterwards they added 3 sighs. Alas, Fengxiao, woe Fengxiao, grief, Fengxiao. Fu Xuan, basing his view on private letters that Cao Cao wrote to Xun Yu, argued that Guo Jia had already understood the strategic significance of the south and had advised Cao Cao to first conquer Jing province. These documents reveal the crucial place Guo Jia held within the Cao faction. However, even if Guo Jia had still been alive, it is doubtful that he could have changed the disastrous outcome at Red Cliffs. For during the campaign pursuing Yuan Shang, many had already advised Cao Cao based on the actual circumstances. Although Cao Cao used Guo Jia's counsel as a pretext, he later admitted himself that there had been many shortcomings in preparation before the expedition. Therefore, he richly rewarded those who had remonstrated with him, saying, "For me to succeed once was already a stroke of fortune. That was heaven's will. It cannot be taken as the norm. The insides of you all are times of great security. Thus I bestow rewards." Cao Cao spoke courteously, yet as his political position rose ever higher, who still dared to easily oppose his decisions? In truth, though Cao Cao said, "It cannot be taken as the norm," not long after, during his southern advance into Jingzhou, he once again formed an alliance, taking several hundred cavalry to pursue Liu Bei. Though he was fortunate enough to win that battle, it was from then that he buried the seeds of later disaster at Red Cliffs. So why did Cao Cao value Guo Jia so greatly? This must return to the time when Guo Jia first entered Cao Cao's service. The one who introduced him was Xun Yu. At first, Cao Cao thought Guo Jia, like Xun Yu, was a man single-hearted in his desire to support the Han dynasty. But upon meeting, Cao Cao discovered that Guo Jia's political stance was even more radical and closer still to his own aspirations. The records of the Three Kingdoms, Book of Wei, records that when Zhao Yun discussed the affairs of the realm, the Grand Ancestor Cao Cao said, "The one who can accomplish great undertakings with me is only this man." Guo Jia, hearing this, rejoiced, saying, "Indeed, there is no true master." The two met as kindred spirits, from then on like fish to water, inseparable, sitting together, even sleeping together. With Cao Cao's powers of observation, it was surely not difficult for him to see Guo Jia's flaws, his unrestrained nature and carelessness for small matters. Yet he still hastily appointed Guo Jia as a chief military advisor and libationer, perhaps for several reasons. First, the entry of numerous scholars from Yingchuan into Cao Cao's ranks had already affected the political balance within his group. From Su Shu before to Guo Jia now, their common point was that they were from Yingchuan, yet from humble families. Cao Cao seemed intent on fostering a force of men from humble origins who would depend entirely upon him to balance against the great clans of Yingchuan, such as the Sun family. Moreover, Guo Jia repeatedly displayed brilliance. Often when Cao Cao hesitated, Guo Jia always provided the best solution, each time judging from Cao Cao's perspective and interest. Because of this, Guo Jia's place in Cao Cao's heart continually rose, to the extent that even on so great a matter as choosing a successor, Cao Cao once told Xun Yu, "The young generals are all my support, but only Feng Xiao truly comprehends the affairs of the realm. I wished to rely upon him in the future, but alas, his life was short." Clearly, Cao Cao had considered most carefully. Cao Cao believed that among his original companions in founding his cause, young men like Guo Jia were those to whom he could entrust the future. But what neither Cao Cao nor Guo Jia foresaw was that Guo Jia would die prematurely. This struck a heavy blow to Cao Cao's original plan to strengthen the influence of men from humble origins. Later, Cao Cao chose another talented youth, Yang Shu. Yet Yang Shu, coming from a powerful political clan, clearly could not truly understand Cao Cao, but clung to securing benefits for his family behind him, even interfering in the issue of Cao Cao's heir. This touched Cao Cao's greatest taboo, ultimately leading to Yang Shu's execution. Meanwhile, as the hegemonic government system formed with Cao Cao fully grasping control of the court, the political influence of the Chancellor's office, like that of a generalissimo overseeing all affairs, grew steadily. Later, the Sima brothers Sima Lang and Sima Yi, by their deep and ruthless character, both rose swiftly from this very position. Had Guo Jia not died young, the power of humble origin officials in Wei's court could surely have been strengthened. At this point, the next figure to be mentioned is Cheng Yu, who was regarded as a martial general of great bravery, even praised above Ben Yu, a term referring to Meng Ben and Sha Yu of the Warring States, symbols of unmatched valor. This shows that beyond his talent in strategy, Cheng Yu also possessed outstanding military ability. So what kind of man was Cheng Yu, and was he truly worthy of a reputation equal to Ben Yu? Cheng Yu, courtesy named Zhongde, was from Donghe in Dong Commandery, Yan Province. His original name was Cheng Li, later changed to Cheng Yu after dreaming he lifted the sun on Mount Tai. He was 8 Chi 3 Kun tall, with fine beard and handsome appearance, yet he had a forthright and irascible temperament, difficult to harmonize with others. Like Jie Shu, Cheng Yu was one of the few figures in Cao Wei's camp who did not come from a powerful clan. Yet even within such a treacherous political environment, he rose smoothly, lived to 80 years old, and died peacefully, comparable to Jie Shu, who had been cautious all his life to preserve safety. This reveals the extraordinary ability of Cheng Yu and his immense influence. Cheng Yu began his career very early. In the first year of Zhongping, when the Yellow Turban Rebellion broke out and flames of war spread everywhere, the Eastern Han Court allowed local officials and powerful clans to recruit their own soldiers to defend their regions, called Buk. In that situation, Cheng Yu stepped forward, using strategy to defeat the Yellow Turban rebels who sought to rise in Donghe County, preserving local safety, and from there opened his military path. After the Yellow Turban Rebellion was suppressed, the Guandong lords united their forces to punish the Grand Tutor Dong Zhuo, but soon collapsed, splitting apart to carve out power and kill without end. At that time, Liu Bei, the inspector of Yan Province, heard of Cheng Yu's reputation and recruited him as an aide. At the end of the Eastern Han, Yan Province lay in the Central Plains, rich in troops, a province with strong military power. In the Guandong coalition against Dong Zhuo, no fewer than 5 commanderies belonged to Yan Province's influence. Yet the coalition did not gather in one place. Yuan Shao stationed in Hanoi, Yuan Shu in Nanyang, while most of Yan Province's forces camped at Suanzhou. But Yan Province lacked a military figure strong enough to unify them. Liu Bei was too weak, unable to compete with other lords or to control the entire province. Within the province, power was divided in confusion. Figures like Zhang Miao, administrator of Chenliu, Yuan Yi, administrator of Shanyang, and Qiao Mao, administrator of Dong Commandery, though nominally subordinate to Liu Bei, were in practice independent. As a native of Yan province, Cheng Yu saw through this disorder and so refused to serve under Liu Bei. At that time, the main Guangdong powers were led by the brothers Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu. In the north, the noble Gongsun Zan, close to Yuan Shu, contended with Yuan Shao over Hebei. Both sought Liu Dai's allegiance. Placed in difficulty, Liu Dai asked Cheng Yu's advice. Cheng Yu counseled that by principle one should not abandon what is near to pursue what is far, and thus should choose Yuan Shao. Indeed, later Gongsun Zan was defeated by Yuan Shao, and Liu Dai thereby secured Yan province. In gratitude, Liu Dai memorialized to recommend Cheng Yu for office, but he declined on grounds of illness. Amid the turmoil of the realm, Cheng Yu observed patiently, awaiting the true lord of his heart. When Liu Dai was killed by Yellow Turban rebels in Yan province, and Cao Cao schemed to seize Yan province, Cheng Yu finally emerged from seclusion, devoting his talents to serve Cao Cao. In his eyes, Cao Cao was the true leader worthy of his utmost ability. At that time, the Central Plains lords struggled for hegemony. Cao Cao stood surrounded on all sides, bearing immense pressure for survival, at times in desperate straits. Yuan Shao, powerful in the north, once sent envoys to persuade Cao Cao to abandon his base and submit to Yuan Shao's authority. Cao Cao was then so troubled that he nearly agreed, seeking relief from his crisis. But Cheng Yu, learning of this, immediately urged him to remain resolute, never to sacrifice long-term advantage for short-term hardship. Cao Cao listened, determined to grit his teeth through his hardest days. Once, Cheng Yu had helped Liu Dai choose Yuan Shao. Another time, he helped Cao Cao refuse subordination to Yuan Shao. These two counsels alone were enough to show Cheng Yu's extraordinary strategic vision. Yet, this was still not enough to place him among the greatest advisors of kings. What truly made him shine brilliantly was the achievement of preserving Cao Cao's main base of Yan province during the eastern campaign into Shu province. At that time, Gongsun Zan contended with Yuan Shao for northern supremacy and had once greatly defeated the Yellow Turban rebels in Qing province. The Yellow Turbans of Jing province, forced by circumstance, shifted into Yan province. The Yellow Turbans from Jing claimed to number 1 million with enormous momentum. After several battles, Liu Dai, the inspector of Yan province, was slain by the Yellow Turbans, leaving Yan province headless. Powerful figures of Yan province such as Zhang Miao, Chen Gong, and Shu Si invited Cao Cao, then serving as administrator of Dong Commandery, to enter Yan province and lead the struggle against the intensifying Yellow Turban threat. On the surface, it seemed Cao Cao had gained a great advantage. In reality, the matter was far more complex. After the Guangdong coalition drove away Dong Zhuo, internal division broke out. The leader Yuan Shao and his brother Yuan Shu formally split politically. Yuan Shao held that Dong Zhuo, having deposed and enthroned emperors on his own and bringing the young emperor Liu Xie to the capital, was illegitimate. Yuan Shao sought to support Liu Yu, governor of Yu province, to establish a new court and thereby raise himself higher. Yuan Shu at that time firmly supported the existing central authority, receiving official appointment from Liu Xie as general of the left. Cao Cao at first was very weak within the Guangdong coalition, playing only a subordinate role under Zhang Miao, administrator of Chenliu. When the coalition fractured, Cao Cao, reuniting with his childhood friend Yuan Shao, received Yuan Shao's aid. Returning to Yan province as Yuan Shao's representative, his power was not what it had been before. The faction of Zhang Miao in Yan province wanted to use Cao Cao against the Yellow Turbans, but at the same time feared Yuan Shao's growing power, worried that through Cao Cao, Yuan Shao might extend his hand into Yan province. Thus naturally, they placed themselves in opposition to Cao Cao. Cao Cao pacified the Yellow Turban forces in Jing province. On the surface, it seemed that a great calamity had been removed, but with the loss of a common enemy, the suspicion of Zhang Miao and the local powers of Yan province toward him only grew stronger, and the rift between both sides widened. It can be said that when Cao Cao first took over Yan province, there was already hidden turmoil within, far from stable. In the spring of the first year of Jinping, Cao Cao's father, on the road from his native home to Yan province, was killed by subordinates of Tao Qian, the governor of Zhu province. Cao Cao, already intent on seizing Zhu province, raised a large-scale army under the pretext of avenging his father and launched a massive campaign against Zhu province, leaving his trusted aides Xun Yu and Cheng Yu to guard the main base in Yan province. Xun Yu, always Cao Cao's most important pillar and usually responsible for all logistics, naturally remained to defend the base. As for military matters, someone needed to take direct command, and among the two, Cheng Yu was most likely the one in charge of military defense in Yan province. Cao Cao attacked Zhu province with the determination to win, mobilizing almost all his main field forces, and indeed he repeatedly drove the Zhu troops into defeat. But in contrast, his base in Yan province was left dangerously empty. Zhang Miao, Chen Gong, and their allies saw this as a golden opportunity to expel Cao Cao from Yan province, though they still lacked a figure strong enough to lead resistance against him. At that very moment, Liu Bei arrived. Once a subordinate of Dong Zhuo, when Dong Zhuo, under pressure from the Guangdong coalition, carried the young Emperor Liu Xie westward to Chang'an, Liu Bei, instigated by minister over the masses Wang Yun, killed Dong Zhuo in a bid for power. Unexpectedly, he was defeated by Dong Zhuo's remaining faction and fled east with only a few hundred cavalry. After wandering repeatedly, though he gathered new forces, he still found no secure refuge. Zhang Miao, Chen Gong, and the local powers of Yan province extended an invitation to Liu Bei. The two sides quickly allied, and in the 4th month of the first year of Jinping formally joined hands against Cao Cao. At that time, Cao Cao's forces were isolated outside, while Zhang Miao and Chen Gong were entrenched locally, and with the addition of the famed general Liu Bei, their strength was immense. Most of the counties in western and central Yan province collapsed before their offensive. General Xiahou Dun, whom Cao Cao had left behind to guard, was even captured alive. Only the 3 counties of Zhuancheng, Fan, and Donghe remained firm and unshaken. Among them, Huancheng housed the families of Cao Cao, a crucial location defended by Cheng Yu and Xun Yu. Those who understood military affairs knew that Liu Bei's seizure of most of the territory was not enough to ensure victory. Unless he moved east to seize the kingdom of Dongping and cut off Cao Cao's return route from Zhu province back to his base, he could not truly secure Yan province. But to capture Dongping, Liu Bei first had to break through Zhuancheng, Fan, and Donghe. As long as these 3 counties held firm and formed a triangular defense, they could resist until Cao Cao's main army returned, at which point there would be a chance to reverse the situation. Cheng Yu understood this principle well. To stabilize morale, he left Zhuancheng, took the great risk of visiting the counties of Fan and Donghe to reassure the soldiers and people, and then dispatched cavalry to seize the ferry crossing at the Jinrong River, cutting off Chen Gong's forces. Facing an enemy at the height of its momentum, Cheng Yu still devised plans in danger. Could he turn the tide? Thanks to Xun Yu's steadfastness, the 3 counties of Zhuancheng, Fan, and Donghe withstood the assault, buying Cao Cao enough time for the main army to return in relief. This successful defense not only saved the situation, but also proved Cheng Yu's ability and loyalty to Cao Cao, winning him absolute trust. By the 5th year of Jianan, the Battle of Guan Yu erupted, as Cao Cao and his rival Yuan Shao fought a decisive struggle for dominance of the north. At that time, Cao Cao had gathered his main forces, and the 2 sides were locked in stalemate. At the strategic military point of Liang on the Yellow River, General of martial might Xun Yu held Zhuancheng with 700 troops. Yuan Shao, seeking to break the deadlock, dispatched a portion of his army southward to attempt a river crossing from the southern side of Liang. Analyzing the situation, Zhuancheng became the first target under threat. Cao Cao, fearing a breach, sent word to Xun Yu, preparing to send 2,000 reinforcements to assist in defending the city. But Xun Yu refused, believing that at this critical moment, Cao Cao should not lightly divide his forces. Moreover, if Yuan Shao saw Juancheng lightly garrisoned, yet treated as vital, he would suspect it was a trap. With his indecisive nature, Yuan Shao would not dare recklessly attack. This was a psychological judgment of Yuan Shao's decision-making. Cao Cao considered carefully and agreed with Xun Yu's reasoning, concentrating his full strength on the front line. Reality proved Xun Yu's prediction correct. When Yuan Shao heard that Juancheng was thinly manned, he suspected deception and indeed did not attack, eventually withdrawing his troops. Cao Cao, upon learning this, praised Xun Yu to Jia Shu, saying his courage and strategy truly surpassed that of Xun Yu. In the 7th year of Jianan, after Yuan Shao's death, his sons inherited the Yuan family's cause. With Cao Cao having defeated Yuan Shao at Guan Yu and gained the initiative in the northern campaign, he advanced north to attack Yuan Tan and Yuan Shang. Xun Yu alone recruited several thousand mountain villagers and fugitives, then joined Cao Cao's main army at Liang. In subsequent battles, he assisted Li Dian in defeating the Yuan forces, ensuring that the vital passage along the Yellow River remained open. For his merit after the campaign, he was appointed General Fenwu and ennobled as Marquis of Anguoting. Alone he held the city, alone he commanded troops, charging into battle to strike down the enemy. Such deeds were in no way the responsibility of a purely civil official. Thus, it is not hard to understand why in Xun Yu's record, the posts he held were all of a military type. For standing 8 ki tall, he was not an ordinary civil minister. Before the Battle of Red Cliffs, Xun Yu also had an accurate judgment of the situation, once advising Cao Cao not to underestimate Sun Quan and Liu Bei. This once again showed the breadth of his vision. In the 16th year of Jianan, Cao Cao campaigned in Guanzhong, striking Han Sui and Ma Chao. He left Cao Pi to guard the main base and entrusted Xun Yu, familiar with both military and political matters, as his assistant. Indeed, when Cao Cao went to the front, some within used the opportunity to stir rebellion. Xia Jingguo rose in revolt. Rebel troops appeared everywhere, but were eventually suppressed by Cao Pi, with more than 1,000 rebel soldiers surrendering. The officials of the court all believed they must follow the old law and execute all surrendered soldiers to set an example. Yet Xun Yu argued that the times had changed. In the past, when the realm was in great chaos, killing surrendered troops could intimidate the enemy and strike fear. But now, with the realm basically pacified, the rebels were people within their own territory, and killing them no longer had deterrent meaning. To pardon them and bring them to peace would be better. Moreover, whether to kill or not, such a matter should wait until Cao Cao returned to decide. Cao Pi, however, felt that since Cao Cao had entrusted him with authority, he could decide by himself, and so he suspiciously asked Xun Yu, "Why must we wait for my father to return?" Xun Yu replied, "The discretionary power bestowed by Duke Cao is in truth only for urgent situations. Now that the rebellion has been quelled, the aftermath is not pressing. If you decide on your own, you may leave the impression of arbitrary dominance." Cao Pi, hearing this, understood the intent and was deeply impressed. When Cao Cao learned the whole matter, he also praised him greatly. Earlier, when Xun Yu had kept some arrangements in his own hands, Cao Cao once hinted to him. Xun Yu understood clearly and at once voluntarily handed over all his military power, dispelling suspicion in Cao Cao's heart. From then on, he was even more highly employed. Thus, it can be seen, although Xun Yu's temperament was not flawless in dealing with both Cao Cao and Cao Pi, his ability to guard himself with wisdom was no less than Jia Shu. This was also the reason he achieved a good end. In the first year of Huangchu, when Cao Pi replaced the Han and declared himself emperor, Xun Yu fell ill and died. Upon hearing, Cao Pi wept with tears, posthumously honored him as general of chariots and cavalry, granted him the title palace attendant, and placed him alongside General-in-Chief Xiahou Dun and Grand Commandant Cao Ren as one of the first ministers to be enshrined in the ancestral temple of Cao Wei. Xun Yu judged men with precision, skillfully grasping their weaknesses and offering fitting strategies. His ability in military command was outstanding, deft in the use of stratagems, calm and composed, a general of talent and resource. Yet, like many officials who bore the sword, he sometimes spoke too bluntly so that many of his correct opinions were not immediately accepted. Fortunately, having found a wise master in Cao Cao, the two complemented each other with deep understanding and so achieved great success. In the end, by his own efforts, he gained the profound trust of both father and son. In the past, Xun Yu had repeatedly refused the invitations of Liu Bei, and outsiders thought he did not wish to serve. Yet later, he chose to follow Cao Cao, causing many to doubt, saying he lacked principle. When asked, Xun Yu merely laughed without reply. How could a swallow understand the ambition of a swan? Compared with the gentle forbearance of Xun Yu, the upright decisiveness of Xun Yu was clearly a counterbalance, and the two often debated each other, contending without either prevailing. Not until Sun Ce's southern campaign, Liu Bei being forced so that Gongsun Zan burned himself to death, Liu Bei's entry into Shu province, Yuan Shu's declaring himself emperor only to be besieged and unable to gain aid, and the complete collapse of the Yuan Shu Gongsun Zan alliance did the two great military coalitions of the realm truly shatter. At that time, among the northern lords, the strongest powers left were only Yuan Shao and Cao Cao. Yuan Shao dominated the north, militarily mighty, boasting he commanded 1,000,000 armored troops. But Cao Cao had taken Emperor Xian of Han, Liu Xie, to Shudu, completing his aim of holding the Son of Heaven to command the lords. Cao Cao sought to use the Son of Heaven's name to unify the realm, while Yuan Shao wished to seize the Son of Heaven to plot usurpation. Two tigers cannot share one mountain. Once sworn brothers, they could not resist the torrent of the age, and the struggle for hegemony between Yuan and Cao became inevitable. In the 4th year of Jianan, the Black Mountain rebels in Hanoi, who had intended to ally with Yuan Shao, were destroyed by Cao Cao striking first. From then on, the great war between Yuan and Cao could no longer be avoided. Yuan Shao took the initiative to raise troops against Cao Cao, opening the decisive battle for supremacy in the north at the end of the Han, the Battle of Guan Yu. Yuan Shao came from the Yuan clan of Runan, a family of 4 generations and 3 excellencies. He was the adopted son, entrusted by his father Yuan Feng and his mother of the Bi clan to his uncle Yuan Cheng, who had died young, to continue the line. With such a distinguished background, at 20, Yuan Shao was appointed magistrate of Puyang County, gaining a reputation for honesty and administrative ability. Later, he entered the court to assist General-in-Chief He Jin, successively holding posts as Colonel of the Central Army and Colonel of the Commandant of the Court, and once took part in killing the eunuchs. When Dong Zhuo usurped control of the court, Yuan Shao refused to join his clique and fled from Luoyang. To entice him, Dong Zhuo appointed him administrator of Bohai, but Yuan Shao instead organized the Guangdong lords, leading troops to punish Dong Zhuo and shaking the realm with his fame. Dong Zhuo fled west, the coalition disintegrated, and the lords turned on each other. Yuan Shao then seized Ji province by stratagem and defeated Gongsun Zan, the strongest military force in the north at that time. Facing encirclement from Yuan Shu, Gongsun Zan and Tao Qian, Yuan Shao allied with Cao Cao, defeating all rivals and ultimately unifying the 4 provinces of Qing, Ji, Yu and Bing, becoming in one stroke the foremost lord of the realm. Before Guandu, Yuan Shao commanded 100,000 elite soldiers and 10,000 cavalry, his power immensely strong. With such a situation, Yuan Shao grew proud and impatient, eager to destroy Cao Cao, who held the Son of Heaven to issue commands to the lords. Drawing his sword, its cold gleam flashing, his momentum reached the skies. At that time, in Cao Cao's camp, Officers and soldiers alike believed Yuan Shao's powerful forces could not be resisted, and morale was shaken. To steady them, Cao Cao consoled them by saying, although Yuan Shao was strong, his capacity was insufficient to bear the ambition of swallowing the world. These words were mainly meant to calm his troops, but they also revealed how well he understood Yuan Shao. For Cao Cao and Yuan Shao had known each other since childhood. Their fathers had both served at court, and the two of them as youths had played together, later both becoming among the 8 colonels of the Western Garden, Yuan Shao as colonel of the Central Army, and Cao Cao as colonel of the Army of the Garrison Cavalry. Later, when opposing Dong Zhuo, they were again Guangdong allies, with Yuan Shao as coalition leader and Cao Cao as General Fen Wu. Because of these years together, Cao Cao knew Yuan Shao's weaknesses thoroughly. Even so, Cao Cao's words did not convince everyone. Kong Rong once questioned Xun Yu, saying that under Yuan Shao there were many civil and military officials not easy to face. Xun Yu explained one by one, silencing Kong Rong, which also reflected that within Cao Cao's camp, before the great battle there was still tension everywhere. In truth, Cao Cao also feared Yuan Shao's mighty forces, and so asked his advisor Guo Jia. Guo Jia analyzed 10 victories and 10 defeats, affirming that ultimate victory would belong to Cao Cao. Before serving Cao Cao, Guo Jia had once joined Yuan Shao. At that time, Yuan Shao was the most prestigious figure, the strongest opponent of Dong Zhuo, and with the mightiest army, plus family influence, he naturally attracted heroes from all sides. But after only a few dozen days, Guo Jia, a man of name, resolutely abandoned Yuan Shao, showing that his judgment of Yuan Shao was by no means baseless. When Cao Cao asked Xun Yu, he too offered similar analysis. Even Jia Shu, when asked, gave the same conclusion. These 3 consultations show that Cao Cao was cautious and experienced, always listening to his advisors to put himself in an invincible position. The 3 responses from Guo Jia, Xun Yu, and Jia Shu further strengthened Cao Cao's confidence in victory over Yuan Shao, while also proving his prudence. Cao Cao and his planning staff, before Guandu, had calculated carefully, weighing both subjective and objective factors in detail. To devote all his strength against the powerful Yuan Shao, Cao Cao sent Zhong Yao to pacify Guanzhong, then marched south to attack Jiangsu, east to campaign against Liu Bei, and afterward pacified Shu province. By either appeasing or purging, he swept away all hostile powers nearby, creating a secure rear base before engaging in the decisive battle of Guandu. Once the rear was stabilized, Cao Cao was assured in advancing to Guandu to face Yuan Shao in decisive battle. Yuan Shao, though strong and eager to destroy Cao Cao, suffered internal disagreements among his many factions over the campaign against Cao Cao. In the 6th month of the 4th year of Jianan, Yuan Shao selected 100,000 elite soldiers and 10,000 horses, intending to march south against Cao Cao. His advisor Zhu Shao argued that having just fought Gongsun Zan, both the gentry and the common people were weary, and they needed rest, urging Yuan Shao to withdraw his army. He proposed that they use the merit of defending the borders to contest political resources with Cao Cao, and that a gradual stabilization was the best plan. In fact, Zhu Shao's advice was a comprehensive strategy. In a time when troops and people were exhausted, first attention should be given to farming and sericulture to nourish the soldiers, then seize the opportunity of the emperor's rewards to strip away Cao Cao's special privilege of holding the Son of Heaven to command the lords, afterward managing Henan, training troops, making reserves ready, while dividing forces to harass enemy borders. In this way, by waiting in ease against the weary, one could surely grasp victory. Yet that cautious advice was opposed by 2 other strategists, Guo Tu and Shen Pei. They argued that their side's strength far surpassed Cao Cao's and that they could win in a single battle. Xu Shu explained that Cao Cao held the great cause of serving the Son of Heaven, and his military capability was far superior to Gongsun Zan's, making him no easy opponent. This explanation only enraged Guo Tu and Chen Pei further, as they accused Xu Shu of being overly conservative. Yuan Shao, filled with grand ambition, ignored loyal counsel, listened instead to Guo Tu and Chen Pei, and even used the excuse that Xu Shu valued outsiders over insiders to strip him of his command, thereby increasing the power of Guo Tu and Chen Pei. Xu Shu was demoted for his remonstrance, yet his colleague Kui Yan also submitted proposals to reorganize the army, which Yuan Shao likewise ignored, determined instead to march south and attack Cao Cao. In the third month of the fourth year of Jianan, Yuan Shao destroyed Gongsun Zan. By the sixth month, he had set his sights firmly on Cao Cao, and by the second month of the fifth year of Jianan, he reached Liang, crossed the Yellow River, and prepared at any moment to descend southward. Because Liu Bei, who had been friendly with Yuan Shao, was temporarily residing in Shu province, Cao Cao decided that to prevent future troubles, he must first eliminate Liu Bei. His generals argued that Yuan Shao was the greater foe, and that it was unwise to divide their focus when facing such a formidable enemy. But Cao Cao held that Liu Bei was a man of extraordinary talent and must be destroyed first. Guo Jia agreed, believing Liu Bei should be struck before Yuan Shao, and judged that with Yuan Shao's hesitant nature he would certainly not seize the chance to attack. Indeed, when Cao Cao clashed with Liu Bei, Tianfeng advised Yuan Shao to strike at Cao Cao's rear, but Yuan Shao hesitated and excused himself on account of his son's illness. Tianfeng stamped his feet in fury within the camp. Afterward, Cao Cao crushed Liu Bei, captured his wife, seized Xiapi, and even took the general Guan Yu prisoner. Liu Bei had no choice but to flee and seek refuge with Yuan Shao. Having secured victory, Cao Cao returned to Guandu, preparing to face Yuan Shao's grand army. Only then did Yuan Shao finally begin to think of advancing. Yet Tianfeng once more submitted counsel, urging Yuan Shao not to recklessly attack Cao Cao, who was already prepared, but rather to rely on his superior foundation, conserve strength, and wait for the right time. He recommended frequently dispatching small detachments to harass Cao Cao's territories, gradually wearing down his strength. In this way, without direct battle, within 3 years, Cao Cao could be ground down to death. But Yuan Shao still refused to listen. Tianfeng persisted, and Yuan Shao, furious, accused him of sowing defeatism, threw him into prison, and held him there. Before the Battle of Guandu, in order to claim the mantle of righteousness, Yuan Shao commanded his secretary Chen Lin to compose a proclamation and distribute it throughout all the provinces and commanderies. In this document, Chen Lin not only listed Cao Cao's crimes, but also insulted his ancestors. The proclamation's release was tantamount to an open declaration of war. Once the war of words was finished, the rest would be decided by weapons on the battlefield. After the main army advanced to Liang, Yuan Shao immediately ordered his general Yan Liang to attack Baima, where Liu Yan, the Grand Administrator of Dong Commandery, was stationed. Xu Shu objected, saying Yan Liang was hot-tempered and lacked calmness, unfit to bear such responsibility alone, but Yuan Shao ignored him. Baima lay south of the Yellow River, facing Liang across the waters. If it were taken, Yuan Shao's army would gain a stable foothold on the southern bank. Therefore, Baima was of utmost importance in Cao Cao's defensive system. Yan Liang, one of Yuan Shao's great generals, famed across the realm alongside Wen Shou, commanded some 5,000 to 6,000 elite cavalry, a sharp and deadly blade. Kong Rong once admired the courage of Yan Liang and Wen Chou, but Xun Yu dismissed them as men of bravery without strategy, not to be feared. In the 4th month of that year, to hold Baima, Cao Cao personally led his army northward, using the plan of strategist Xun Yu. They performed sacrifices to heaven, feigning to cross the river at Yanjin, also on the southern bank of the Yellow River, intending to circle behind Yuan Shao's army and draw his attention. At the same time, Cao Cao secretly sent a mobile cavalry force to strike directly at Baima. Acting as planned, when Yuan Shao heard that Cao Cao's forces were preparing to cross the river, he immediately shifted troops westward to respond. Cao Cao seized the chance and led his army straight to Baima. When less than 10 li away, Yan Liang was caught completely unprepared and hastily engaged. Cao Cao at once ordered Zhang Liao and Guan Yu to charge as vanguard. The moment Guan Yu saw Yan Liang, he spurred his horse straight forward and amid the massed enemy forces struck Yan Liang down, severed his head, and rode back. The relieving army was utterly routed, the siege of Baima broken, and Cao Cao's forces returned in triumph. Yuan Shao could not swallow this humiliation and resolved to cross the river to pursue Cao Cao's army. Tianfeng again advised that the main army should hold firm, forbidding any division of forces to cross. If they won, the whole army could then cross in triumph, but if they lost, there would still be a line of retreat. Yuan Shao ignored this. Seeing his advice dismissed yet again, Tianfeng grew bitter, requested resignation, but Yuan Shao refused, secretly harbored resentment, and handed Tianfeng's subordinates over to Guo Tu's command. Yuan Shao, rejecting counsel, stubbornly chased Cao Cao's troops south of Yanjin. Cao Cao encamped at Shannon Banxia and sent scouts to observe Yuan Shao's pursuing army. The scouts reported 500 to 600 cavalry and countless infantry. Cao Cao said, "No need to report further." Then he ordered his soldiers to set down their arms and baggage openly along the road. The troops did not understand, but strategist Xun Yu recognized it as Cao Cao's stratagem to lure the enemy. When the pursuing soldiers arrived, they rushed to seize the supplies, throwing their formation into chaos. At that moment, Cao Cao's infantry, coordinated with 600 cavalry, suddenly launched a counterattack. Striking amid the disorder, they slew Yuan Shao's general Wen Chou and captured many others. The morale of Yuan Shao's army collapsed. In the past, at the Battle of Yanzhou, Liu Bei's cavalry was not numerous, yet they once charged and shattered Cao Cao's forces, and even Cao Cao himself nearly fell into captivity. This time, facing the elite Hebei cavalry of Yuan Shao, Cao Cao's troops still won a great victory, enough to show that their training had changed from before and their ability to fight against cavalry had been greatly strengthened. In the first clash, Cao Cao held the upper hand. Yuan Shao's initial expedition was unfavorable. Although he lost two of his great generals, with his immense strength he was not yet truly harmed, and at once resolved to continue pressing against Cao Cao's forces. After all, in years past, when he fought Gongsun Zan, Yuan Shao had suffered defeat, yet through relentless attacks he eventually secured victory. Though victorious, Cao Cao saw that Baima's position was too far forward and difficult to defend. Therefore, after two complete triumphs, he withdrew his army back to Guandu, choosing a defensive stance. While Cao Cao and Yuan Shao were locked in tense confrontation, preparing for the next fierce battle, suddenly in Cao Cao's rear arose a new disturbance. This matter was connected to Liu Bei, the very one who earlier had been crushed. With Yuan Shao's fierce momentum before him and Liu Bei suddenly returning behind, the situation abruptly worsened. How would Cao Cao face this dilemma?